CFOs should probably start going out and asking their people. Like, there's a great data point just by going and asking them, what's it really like to work here? What's the experience like? And where are some of the pain points? So I'm not a CFO, but I've worked with many that we love to look at that data and be able to tie that back. That's so important. But sometimes data is also qualitative, right?
But, with the data, let's just say, CFO goes and asks and they get feedback. What then? What needs to be put in place then, or how would you be advising them to?
This needs to be a board level strategic priority, right? It doesn't then all of a sudden become a CFO. It's not HR's problem anymore. Now it's CFO's problem. This is where this needs to be discussed at a board level. What are we doing to improve the experience of?
Thank you for listening to the podcast thus far. The one favor I would ask, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, is to press the follow and subscribe button on whatever media platform you listen to us, as it helps us grow our network and grow the podcast. So thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Alchemy Uncensored podcast. Today, we're joined by not one, but two distinguished guests, Killian Fitzgerald and Ruth Dance. Killian is an account executive at Workvivo for over 4 years, and for the past 3.5, he's been based in Dubai, covering the Middle East and Africa region, helping organizations across the region enhance their employee experience and strengthen workplace culture. Ruth is the founder of Employee Experience Exchange, or EXE, a fast-growing community here in the UAE, bringing together senior HR, communications, and people leaders to reimagine what employee experience means in today's business landscape. Ruth has spent 20 years working with global organizations on leadership, reputation, and workplace culture, helping them understand how the experience people have at work directly impacts performance, trust, and the bottom line. She's also a coach, facilitator, and speaker, and a mother of 3 boys. Today, she's sharing a fresh and honest perspective on what it really takes to build a people-first organization that perform and why reputation starts from the inside out. So guys, how are we?
Good. I'm so happy to be sat here talking about employee experience of 2 Irishmen.
Yeah, look at you. Look at you. Yeah, very good. Very good. No, thanks for coming today. So look, we're going to delve into lots of different points, plenty of conversations. Hopefully there'll be some golden nuggets for our listeners. Obviously, our listeners are usually a mixture of, HR, finance, tax professionals. And I know from working in the UAE for the last 8 years, there's a lot of bad companies. We're not going to name them obviously today, but I'm sure you, Ruth, hear a lot of the stories that I hear as well. So yeah, I guess the whole purpose is to give a different perspective and go from there. So I guess, Ruth, I'll start with you. How do you define employee experience?
Well, employee experience, or EX.
Yeah.
It's really the sum of the entire experience that people have when they work with you. So that can be from the moment they interact with your company, first before they even think about joining, to when they become part of your alumni network. They take that reputation of what it was like to work with you to the grave, right? So it's the experience that people have with your organization. That's how I define it. And I think the best way to describe it to listeners, if it's maybe a new term to them, is we've been talking about the concept of customer experience for a really long time, right? We've been talking about maybe user experience in the digital space or customer experience in the consumer space. We've been looking at customer research, sentiment, user behavior, how people feel about the brand, the decisions they make when they are interacting with the brand. We've invested a lot of money into product development and product experience. And now we really need to go, hold on a second, it's our people in our organization that are driving those experiences for our customers. Are we doing that for our people first? Are we setting the bar right first? So it's the impact of the experience that people have with you that sets the bar for everything else that happens.
And how's been, I sit in recruitment, Nobody calls me saying, I love my job, find me a new job. It's very much, the company's this, the boss is this. So I would imagine this space is booming in the UAE, or is it more trying to get awareness
to potential companies that, there is this avenue available?
Surprisingly, I've been here 2 years and I expected to arrive here and see it booming because this region's booming, right? It's the fastest growing region in the world. We're seeing amazing stuff happen in tech and in innovation and in businesses here. So I did expect to see that. But actually, when we look behind the scenes at how this region has grown or the reasons why people have been in this region, it was generally quite short-term, come in, earn my money and leave.
Yeah.
And that's changed. And it has changed so much. But I don't think workplaces have put employee experience at the top of their strategic priorities as maybe they have done in other regions of the world. So that is why I started EXE, really, was because it should be booming and it's not yet.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely, we're starting.
For all our listeners, get in touch, spread the word.
Yeah.
And Killian, then, on to you. How would you define it?
I would define the employee experience as how do your employees feel on a day-to-day basis, maybe on that Sunday evening when they're heading into the office on a Monday morning. A lot of organizations that are maybe still a little bit traditional think employee engagement, employee experience initiatives are, free pizza in the office on a Friday or yoga and things like that. But I would define the employee experience as how do they feel on that Sunday night and how do they feel on a day-to-day basis when they're commuting to your office and starting their day's work.
Employee experience, it's not a HR issue. So it's a strategic issue. So do you want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, sorry, Killian, I'm gonna steal this one because I'm so passionate about this. It is absolutely not a HR issue or a HR initiative. And what we're doing is we are seeing it being driven a lot from HR. But the reason I started EXE was to bring HR leadership, comms, was to bring all of those different departments together, or anyone that really cares about the experience people have, and say, how do we make this an everyone, not an issue, an opportunity, right? Traditionally being driven out of HR, maybe because that they were the people that did organise the pizzas or did organise the annual survey, back in the day. But it's not, and it should be one of your top 3 key strategic drivers of business growth. It really should, because you can link it back to the business results. Yeah. But we're not seeing that just yet here.
Well, I guess historically HR would be seen as the human resources, the people. So,
yes,
they would be driving. But obviously for, our listeners, we'll have a lot of CFOs, finance people who will be listening to this. And why isn't it that, CFOs are, not caring what's, how would you be pushing it to them that, it is actually related to the numbers? Because CFOs, finance people, obviously, naturally, it's numbers, it's Excel, where is it going to show up for them?
Killian, I know you might have some different thoughts on this to me. I think the reason CFOs are maybe not prioritizing budgets, let's say, to EX holistically is because they just don't necessarily, they're not aware of the impact it has on the bottom line or on their P&L. And when we can start to help connect the dots of the impact it has on innovation, productivity, churn, loss of talent, when we can start to connect it to that bottom line and show them that directly, that's when they will really start to see it as such an important driver. But Killian, you might have some different thoughts on why CFOs are not taking it too seriously just yet.
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely an awareness thing, but CFOs absolutely should care about employee experience, right? So at the end of the day, the employee experience affects the bottom line. As Ruth mentioned earlier, we put so much emphasis on the emotional experience of the customer's experience. So from their purchase to post-purchase, their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with a product or with a service. But employee experience has always been kind of associated as a process or a box ticking exercise. But I think if you start to emphasize that employee experience, the ROI on that, there's probably a lot of hidden costs in a CFO's balance sheet on a disengaged workforce, right? You've got absenteeism, lower productivity, retention, attrition, things like that. So we're definitely seeing it being more of a topic in the boardroom than traditionally. And we're seeing the conversations from the vendor's perspective go from solely HR to actually being a leadership initiative now. And
again, let's just play devil's advocate here. If I'm the HR or HRD or the CFO, what is an employee experience? What would happen? What if I was to engage today? What's the different sort of avenues? If we're not saying it's the pizza on a Friday afternoon, if it's not the round of bowling or something, or a long lunch on a Friday, Can we share some thoughts on what that is?
Yeah, listen, I love pizza around a bowling.
We all
right?
do, we all do.
Just like the next person. So those things are important, but they're important for that sense of camaraderie, for collaboration, for relationships, for mental well-being at times. But really, what is it? What makes up an employee experience? I think you can look at it in two ways. You can look at it at the journey people have. You know, you can look at the onboarding. You can look at the first 100 days. You can look at how they are performance managed and the relationship with their manager. You can look at management capability. You can look at leadership development. You can look at exit. You can look at so many different touch points in a journey. But you can also look at it around how are people emotionally connected to the business, like you said, Killian, whether that's around how well they feel and how healthy they feel, whether that's around how much they think their business cares about society or long-term sustainability, whether that's around whether people feel connected to the purpose. Do they even know the purpose? Or is it just a poster on the wall, you know? It's around how are people living the values intentionally that you've set out in the organization. So yes, pizza's great. And yes, annual surveys asking your people if they're happy or not is a good place to start. But it's those two things alone are not going to drive the bottom line. And when you're able to connect these experiences, these touch points, these journeys, these key drivers for people's happiness, when you can connect that to the experience, which impacts the engagement, which impacts the customer satisfaction, which impacts the profitability of the business, when you can do that, that's where the magic happens.
And having been here now for a few years, what's the most common feedback you get? You know, if you're working with a client, why are the people, you know, when the employees are having exit interviews, do you get to hear like, why are they leaving? What is the most common sort of trend of people resigning or moving on?
I think this part of the world particularly, we see some quite unique reasons for that. And some of the usual ones around career progression, money. These are things that happen all over the world, by the way. People want more money, right? Or they want more career progression. This is not unique. But I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, that years ago, people arrived in this region to help build it. They maybe came for a short amount of time, they earned some tax-free money, and then they left. But actually, and I'm one of these people that is here to stay. I've got 3 kids, as you already said, and I'm not here to just earn some money and leave. I'm here to be part of the growth. And that means for an organization I work in, it means for this region of the world. And with that comes different expectations of it's not short-term pain in an organization for short-term gain. This is about long-term longevity and happiness. And lots of us are here now for a better quality of life, and that includes at work. So I think there's that, but also, you know, this is the most diverse, multicultural part of the world.
Well, yeah, on that as well. How do you go about companies? Because obviously I see it in recruitment, where there's certain companies, and let's just say the nationality is so heavily weighted, and I'm sure they tell you this is an issue because we're struggling to get the talent because we're so on one side. When you send someone from a very different background, it's very hard for them to, I guess, have a good employee experience. Is that something you've come up? I'm sure there's some certain companies you see, and it's just
sure, particularly when the leadership team is quite heavily weighted in a certain culture, and we're talking about geographical cultures, maybe religious cultures and historical cultures. We're not talking about a culture in an organization. That is a challenge for sure. And I think that's where you really need to lean heavily on intentionally designing what you want your organizational culture to be, holding leadership to account on that, having really clear values, really clear leadership behaviors, and not taking your culture, the way you're from, as an excuse. So it's having to become way more intentional.
Because there's a lot of mini-me hiring, we call it here, from a lot of hiring managers. I'm sure Killian's probably seen a bit of it as well.
Yeah, I think definitely agree with what Ruth has highlighted, but I think we see a lot of common themes when we're working with organizations. So we work with chief people officers, CHROs, and the feedback is when they do carry out those exit surveys that people are leaving for a lot more reasons than monetary, to a certain extent. Obviously, if Connor comes knocking and there's 40,000 dirhams a month sitting somewhere, that might turn people's head. But a lot of the common themes are, and regardless of nationality, I think all of us want that sense of purpose, recognition, feel informed, connected, and aligned to the values of the company. You want to know the direction the company you're working for is going in. So a lot of the work that senior leadership teams are putting in place now and coming to platforms like Workvivo is to have that more bi-directional communications and rather than it being top down, and actually coming to your employees with a bended ear, taking their feedback and some actionable outcomes on the back of that. So we're definitely seeing that people feel undervalued, overworked, lack of recognition, their voice not heard, and we're seeing that across the board.
I think the voice piece is a really interesting one. Look at the generation that are, I want to say, just coming into the workplace, but they're not. They're already in the workplace, right? But like the generation below me, I guess, they've grown up in a world that's so consumer focused, haven't they? Where they have had a voice, whether that's on Glassdoor, TripAdvisor, review sites. They've grown up with social media around them. They've had, I can buy anything on Amazon with one click instantly. It's seamless experience for me. My life outside of work has been so seamless and consumer focused on me. And then I enter the workplace and it's so clunky.
Yeah.
And it's such hard work. And no one asks me for my opinion. Yeah. And then no wonder we've got maybe like a lack of innovation or a lack of engagement or a lack of productivity, because we're putting great talent into these leaky buckets because we're not focusing on the experience first.
When you look at it from what we touched on earlier, the maturity of the region, several years ago when I first came to the region, there was a lot of those traditional legacy tools in place. But the days of having an @all in a Microsoft Teams or a Slack channel or a company-wide email distribution list are gone. Particularly those demographics we touched on, they want those targeted, personalized communications where they can actually respond as well.
Yeah.
That's definitely what we're seeing.
And then what data should leaders be paying attention to, and what are the hidden costs of everything that leaders may not be seeing?
There's one interesting statistic, which is actually really positive, that 75% of senior executives think that employee experience is actually a really important thing that they should be focusing on right now. And we also know that it's the employee experience, and if employees have a positive experience, that drives 32% of the customer satisfaction. And that then drives 24% of the bottom line. So that link between EX to customer experience, CX to bottom line is clear, and it's driving it, and we've got the research to show that. So there are some good research points to show that, but I know you've got some great data, particularly from your platform and your research here, that's probably even better than that.
Yeah, so earlier in the year, Workvivo published a frontline gap report where we surveyed over 7,500 frontline workers. So in all of today's conversation, I think the part of the workforce that suffer the most are the frontline workers. So they're the employees that effectively keep society running. They're the hospitality workers, the drivers, cabin crews, the retail workers. A lot of those employees do not have corporate email addresses. They're not part of the Slack channels and the Microsoft productivity suite. So they're often forgotten about. But some of that report is frightening. So I think some of the statistics in there, 49% of frontline workers feel that they have a bigger impact than their office colleagues, but are not recognized. And almost half don't know who their CEO is, which I think was probably the craziest statistic in that report. So it's definitely something that we're seeing on a platform level.
Okay. And then for the senior finance people listening, what data should they be watching that can help them actually understand employee experience a little bit better?
They should be looking at churn rates. They should be potentially looking at absenteeism, but really they should be looking at innovation, employee ideas, productivity. They should be, to some extent, they should be paying attention to all the data that their employees are giving them. And I'm, again, not just talking about whenever you survey them. There are a million other data points that you can access. And one of the simplest ways is I think that the CFO should probably start going and asking their people. Like, there's a great data point just by going and asking them, what's it really like to work here? What's the experience like? And where are some of the pain points? So I'm not a CFO, but I've worked with many that we love to look at that data and be able to tie that back. That's so important. But sometimes data is also qualitative, right?
But, with the data, let's just say, CFO goes and asks and they get feedback. What then? What needs to be put in place then, or how would you be advising them to?
This needs to be a board level strategic priority, right? This is not, it doesn't then all of a sudden become a CFO. It's not HR's problem anymore. Now it's CFO's problem. This is where this needs to be discussed at a board level. What are we doing to improve the experience of our people? And yes, there are some amazing tech platforms entering into this region that have seen huge growth elsewhere. Is now like Workvivo, that is now seeing like fastest growing region in the world. There is a lot of things that you can do that will help you. There's a lot of people out there that can support you to do that. But it also shouldn't just be a CFO thing. You can. I don't even know what you can do.
Yeah. Well,
I'm getting lost.
A statistic I always like,
get those stats out. Come on.
No, even a data point more than a statistic is employee referrals. I think that's always an indicator. Do your employees want their friends and family to work at your organization? And if not, why? So a lot of customers will come to us and say, we're really struggling with employee referrals, but looking at our NPS scores, looking at our sentiment analysis, our survey feedback, we think employees like working here, and the data shows they do. Sometimes it's just an awareness thing or visibility on the jobs forum, but I always think that's a nice indicator of where your culture or your employee experience is at. Do I want my friends and family to work here?
And on that, I want to dig into just Workvivo.
Yeah.
For our listeners, obviously, look, it's a massive global company. Powered by Zoom now.
Yeah.
What do Workvivo do?
Yeah.
Give us a bird's eye view what you guys do and how you helps employees.
Yeah. So in summary, Workvivo is an employee experience platform that's there to unify internal communications, employee engagement, and act as the digital heart of the organization. So when we meet global companies, small companies, all shapes and sizes, there's a lot of common themes we're seeing. So some of the stuff we've discussed today, the days of top-down communications where you just constantly push updates at employees are definitely gone. And we've seen that shift where they're looking for a platform to have that open communications, gather the feedback, and then they can action it with what they're pushing out. A couple of other things we're seeing is like application fatigue. So there's been lots of niche and trendy platforms over the past few years. So a lot of organizations will have a survey tool, a newsletter tool, a translation tool, an intranet, you name it. And a lot of it is us looking to consolidate it. So in simple terms, an employee experience platform. We wear a lot of different hats and bells and whistles along the way. Mm-hmm. And it's a very tailored approach then to each organization.
It'd be a bit like, again, for people my age and a bit older, the way I see it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's sort of like a Facebook where, something that happens in the company for any employee, it gives them an avenue to actually say, look, this has happened, bit of a success story, and it gets you visibility across the whole business in a way.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So we always position it as like an internal LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So a very consumer grade UI where if you roll out to an organization of 5,000 people, it's very easy to implement. 99% of the workforce do not require, training. It's quite simple. You're consuming bite-sized pieces of information. You're liking, commenting, sharing, collaborating. Very simple to those, similar to those consumer platforms. So in simple terms, that's what we do. There's lots of other stuff in the background.
It's a great time to be doing it because everybody has their head in their phone these days.
Exactly. Exactly. So we've seen again, like some reports where traditionally in the workplace, let's say 30 years ago, if you were to ask an employee on their personal device to have a mobile application that's for work where they would receive updates, it would be absolutely no. A lot of them would clock in at 9, clock out at 5, and that's work finished. Whereas we're seeing with the younger demographic, they would prefer to choose when they consume those updates. So rather than being distracted by an email or a Slack during your workday, I'm on my lunch break, I'm using my consumer apps like Instagram, like LinkedIn, and then I pop into Workvivo and I'm up to speed with what's happening. So that's exactly how it is, that they can consume that information in their own time.
Perfect. And then Ruth, I think as you said, you're here 2 years now, just over 2 years. So what happened? Why did you want to come here and leave lovely?
I was in England actually. I'm originally from Wales.
Yeah.
But
did you see a gap here, or was it just more of a family reasons you came out here? And
simply put, my husband had been working in this region for a well-known local, was a tech startup at the time now. It's one of the major players here. And so it was on the cards for a while. But, I had a business and 3 kids and a very
3 boys as well.
3 boys, yeah.
I'll keep manners on you.
Yeah. So it wasn't the easiest decision, but I always had one eye on how I knew that this was such a fast growing region. I just didn't know if this region was necessarily ready for what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
So I spent the first year really keeping a low profile, listening, learning, a lot of coffees. We all know the coffee culture here. So I spent that first year really understanding the lay of the land and the appetite for it before I then
a lot of people canceling last minute, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah. I'm just really...
and rocking in 50 minutes late. Yes. Not a worry, yeah.
So eventually we made the move. It was with his job, with my husband's job, but the reality is that there's such an opportunity for what I can offer here. So
I personally, the game you guys are in, there's probably no better market in the world for it, because nothing's the same here. You know, you go to a company in Europe maybe about 15, 20 years ago where it was very much, you know, Irish companies, just all Irish people. You know, it's obviously getting a bit different now, but everybody's the same. Well, now you need to, within Alchemy, I think we've got 3 or 4 different nationalities in a team of 9 people.
Wow.
And everyone's very different. Is that right, Tiffany? They all have their different things that they're interested in, but then the other nationalities they've never heard of these things. So I think getting awareness, you know, what obviously both you guys are doing it's a challenge, I would imagine, but it's where the opportunity is.
I think that whole inclusion and belonging used to be a bit of a tick box exercise around diversity and numbers of nationalities or gender balance. But actually feeling included and feeling like I belong has become such an important thing for people. So being able to be connected to everyone via a platform like Workvivo enables that inclusion and belonging.
But I think it's just getting, you know, even on social media platforms like on LinkedIn, if we do a post, you don't realize about the eyeballs. You know, it's not a case that everyone needs to like it, but people are seeing it.
Yeah.
You know, we do sometimes post and someone will come up to you and say, I've seen that. Not that we're watching who's monitoring, who's liking the post, but like, this guy's never interacted with anything. So, you know, everybody is seeing everything. So it's the same, I guess. And
it's really important, like in organizations as well. Here's an interesting statistic as well. Like the spending power of people with disabilities, or in this region known as people of determination, is like 400 billion. You know, globally. But there's an opportunity there to look at your accessibility, look at your inclusion, look at your belonging from so many different avenues, not just around like nationality. And we are seeing some amazing organizations do some great things. Look at did you see that DXB Airports just appointed a strategic accessibility advisory board? The likes of Aldar and Meryl over in Abu Dhabi are doing some amazing work around their culture, their people experience, inclusion, accessibility. ADNOC doing some great stuff in their engineering fields around women and women representation. They even have a field that's a Remaitha field that's fully led by women. And tying it back to the impact it has on the business, we are seeing some great stuff happening here. We just need to shine the light on that and help people do it.
And out of interest, because there's such a disparity in company sizes in this region, you've mentioned a few of the big household names, but in general, this is applicable to everyone. You know, do you find it harder with startups where you're dealing with a founder who he or she will be very hard to influence, or is it easier with the big corporates where
I think there's more eyes on the big corporates, but then it's much harder to execute. And sometimes with some of the big corporates, there comes a layer of arrogance of we're already doing really well.
Oh, tell me about it, yeah. Every company thinks they're great in this country.
So I actually think with the startups, if you've got the right leader who understands it and understands that having a people first mindset first will impact the product or the service. The challenge you've got is when they go from startup to growth companies or, you know, into the big corporates, you can lose that quite quickly and you can lose one eye on it.
I think personally, my feedback would be the biggest challenge with this market is that everybody's looking for a job who's in a job. And if you've got one person who's like your rock, who's really the person leading this project, you know, if he or she moves, like that's the biggest, even for us, when we look at CFOs, it's very rare you see someone in a job for 10, 15 years. Like while in the UK or Japan, it's very much a job for life where, you know, you really have a leader who'll putting yourself in these companies and getting relationships all around just in case something does move on.
For me personally, yeah, building the relationships, but I'm wanting to create a movement, not just change with one person in an organization. So we do need to make this an everyone problem or an everyone opportunity.
It's awareness.
Yeah, it's about creating awareness of the importance of employee experience, and not, as my dad would put it back in the UK, just some fluffy stuff that HR does. So yeah, it's about creating awareness of the impact this will have.
And then just, because again, I'm just targeting, so the majority of our listeners are going to be CFOs. In general, I'm sure HR, for the most part, are very receptive, to conversation. I'm sure there's, of course, but with CFOs, I imagine it's a little bit trickier. So, with that, for a CFO, if they were to do something tomorrow to influence employee experience, positively, what could they do apart from walking down to someone and saying, "Are you happy?"
Okay, I would really recommend that. Maybe not. Are you happy? But talk to me honestly. What's the experience like here? I would get them to connect, to work out what are the levers and how are they connecting the experience that their people are having at their organizations to the bottom line of their business. They do exist. They've just got to work out what they are. So go and find out what those levers are, get a project team together. But how are you measuring how the experience is impacting your bottom line? Because it is, just you need to find out what it is. That would be my advice to the CFOs.
Killian?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit simpler or cliche, but invest in employee experience. And that might not be the CFO's area of expertise, but you've hired the experts in your HR, your comms team, your employee engagement team. So go and speak to them. I'm sure they've captured the feedback of employees already. It's just quite hard to get into that boardroom with initiatives like this. So I think just investing in employee experience and investing in EX is investing in the long-term growth of your business, right? Because there's definitely a correlation between a positive EX to a positive CX, which affects the financial performance of a business, which is what CFOs care about.
And just on that then, so what is the biggest mindset shift that, these leaders need to make then?
The biggest mindset shift that they need to make, and we're actually seeing them already kind of transitioning, is that employee experience is no longer like a luxury or a nice to have. It should be very much a business lever or a strategic initiative. And I hate using COVID as a timeline, but I think there was a massive transition where company culture went from being in the office to digital. Even for employees who've returned to the office and organizations that have returned to the office, I think it's still very much digital. So we've already seen a little shift, but I would say changing that mindset from it being a luxury to a necessity.
Ruth, anything to add before we close up?
The big for CFOs and for the C-suite is exactly what Killian already said, actually. Experience your people have is not a nice to have or something that you should do for an employer brand perspective. Whilst that helps to attract talent, if you're not living it on the inside, it'll come and bite you.
They'll leave, yeah.
They'll leave, or your reputation will precede you as well. I'm gonna leave on a final note. There's a very well-known company here in this region that on their website does all the right things, right? They listen to people, they have amazing benefits in place, they have a great brand, they offer things like unlimited annual leave and, like all these amazing benefits, right? And they do pay pretty well as well. So you would think, they've got an amazing employee experience. But the reality is their reputation is starting to precede the website,
Okay.
And that is because everyone now, every employee is a journalist, right? Yeah. Everyone's got a voice and people talk, and so you can spend as much money as you want on making that website or making your product and service look great. But if you're not looking after your people in the process, it'll come to bite you now.
We're in the land where it is all about these, everything looks pretty in the outside, I guess. When you delve into it. So
we can't get away with that anymore.
No, and then it could put me out of business if I wasn't so happy in the jobs. But no, look, we definitely know the companies that we wouldn't touch, I'll put it that way, because we hear such consistent feedback, and it's across the board. It's all companies, big and small. But yeah, it's quite surprising. Some of the ones that you might perceive to be the great companies actually aren't. So guys, we're going to end on a few quick fire questions. So this, hopefully we catch you out. We have a bit of an awkward
I don't know what's coming here.
On a lighter note, we've got a few questions that we would like to ask you to get to know you more as a person. So, Killian, you look a bit nervous here now. So you ready?
I don't know what's coming. I was expecting the rest.
So what book has influenced you most for your leadership style?
Favorite book of mine is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, I think. Yeah, just, I guess, relative to the workplace, all about having a sense of purpose. And yeah, I think that's quite a reflective one.
Good. And Ruth?
Oh, I'd love to say I'm a reader.
Yeah, I'm not
I'm more of a podcaster. Listening to your podcast, Connor.
What podcast then?
No, there is a book. It's an old one. It's a good one. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, so yeah.
Right. It's a good one. And one of the things in there that I consistently talk about in the work that I do is focusing on your circles of control and influence. Mm-hmm. It can be very easy to get bogged down in things that we have no control or no influence over, and we can't change. Right, whether that's the weather or political or
just get on with it.
But what can we do, and what can we do to create change in our organizations, within our roles, in this world? So that's really influenced how I lead and how I work.
Good. And then if you could have a conversation with your younger self.
How young, Connor?
Well, you look the youngest of all the three of us here anyway.
Okay, if I could have a conversation
what
with my
would you
self?
say? Was there anything you'd say positive or negative? Or constructive?
Yeah, okay, so I'm 40. So let's go back 20 years. Let's go back.
And anyone who's watching could admit she looks the youngest of the three here anyway.
No, so if I could, that's living here in the UAE in the sunshine, isn't it? If I could go back to 20, I'm going to go back to 20, right? Like just at that kind of starting point of my career, I would give the advice to myself to not let the fear of doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing hold me back. Yeah. Because the second I let go of fear, which coincidentally was around the time I became a mother 10 years ago, but the second I let go of that fear, that's when the real growth started to happen. So that would be the advice.
Good, very good. Well, Killian, you're still a young man.
Mine would be probably a little bit cliche and quite simple, but just go for it. Yeah. It's a little bit on the fence about relocating to Dubai, a little bit on the fence of joining a startup. Obviously, when I joined Workvivo, we were very small in a small office in Ireland. I think the safe bet would be go one of the big players with a bit of job security and, a very simple career path. But just go for it, roll the dice.
And where in Ireland was it?
In Cork.
In Cork.
In
Cork, a bit of a shout out now.
It took 30 minutes, but we got there.
Perfect, guys. Look, thank you both so much for coming on. That was a great conversation, and I'm sure we'll add a lot of value to our listeners.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast. See you on the next episode.